everyone, Tiffany here with Fabric Creations by Tiffany. I have more binding tips for you. I'm working on a different quilt today that has cotton batting in it. It's a little flatter for demonstration purposes. And I'm showing you today how to flip the binding over to the back side of the quilt and stitch it down by machine. A lot of times we do this by hand, and that's a wonderful way to do this, especially for quilt shows or anything that's going to be judged. But for your own use, you can just stitch this down by machine. And you can also hide the stitches in the ditch of the front of the quilt where it looks very nice, and you can't even almost tell sometimes that it's done by machine from the front side of the quilt. Okay, now I wanted to tell you this. When I sewed the binding on the top, I used the 1/4" foot as I mentioned in my video, and this is the one I used. Now when I switched to sewing the binding on the back, I switched to this foot. It's a larger foot and it has a clear open area right here in the center, and I can see where my stitches are landing a little bit better. This 1/4" foot just has a round hole there. You can't really see as well where you would be stitching, so that's why I switched to this larger open-toed foot is really what I like to call it, because you can see in there. Now when you're stitching, just try to pull your binding over this previous line like that, and then stitch along the edge as close to the edge as possible. Now a lot of this is going to be done by feel, because you can kind of feel that ridge with your fingers, and you can kind of feel where you're sewing. Sewn quite a bit of this here, as you can see. It has a nice finish here. You can't really see the stitching on the top of the quilt. It's pretty much in the ditch. You can see a little bit of it, but and the back side is stitched very closely to the edge of the binding. Now one thing you can do if you have a fabric that you can't really match your thread very well, you can use an invisible thread in the bobbin if you want to. Maybe if you can't match your top fabric exact, or maybe you have an area that has really dark fabric and then it goes into light and dark and it just looks kind of messy here on the top. So you could, if you had use some invisible thread in the bobbin, but I wouldn't use it for both. I would choose a matching thread for this side and then the bobbin thread. So that's one idea that you could do if you wanted to. Now here I'm going to continue on. I'm sorry about the light. I'm going to flip it back on and continue on here. I want to show you how to do the corner, so you'll know how to pivot here at the corner. So continue on, and then when I get to the corner, just flatten everything out as best you can, and then flip it up, and then get a pin and place it in here right at the very corner, and go through all your fabrics. Okay, now you're ready to stitch down to the corner. We're going to take one stitch over in this part of the binding, then I'm going to stop and back stitch one stitch and then go forward again. There's my one stitch forward, here's my one stitch back, and then my one stitch forward. Okay, now raise the presser foot and take the pin out. I'm going to pivot this around. Okay, now I'm ready to start down this way, but first I want to make one back stitch again. Okay, and then one stitch forward, and sometimes you might have to lift just a little to get there's a lot of bulk in there. Depending on how well your machine will feed, you might have to help it along. This machine I have feeds very well for binding. This is a baby lock, and it's not a digitized machine at all or a computerized machine. It's all mechanical, and it feeds very well on these heavy fabrics. Okay, So you just keep continuing on. And it looks like I'm getting close to my starting point. So if you haven't seen the first couple of videos I did on machine binding, go back and take a look at those. I talked about how to join the two pieces of binding when you first start out, and then I talked about how to sew it onto the top of the quilt and do the miter corners. So if you are enjoying these videos, give me a like or leave a comment and let me know. Let me know what you would like to see me demonstrate, because I am working on quilts every day and there's always something someone has a question about. So let me know what you would like to see and I'll put it in a video. And thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.